This is Southampton Town Supervisor Jay Schneiderman. I'd like to call to order this work session of the Southampton Town Board on this 4th day of June, 2020. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Right. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Supervisor Schneiderman,
Here.
Councilwoman Lofstad,
Here.
Councilman Martell,
Here.
Councilman Bouvier, Councilman Schiavone.
I don't see Schiavone.
He's connecting, so he'll be on soon if he's not on already. And John, I think you might have been muted, but John is certainly here. And I think a number of us, including Charles Certain from CTV, but Rick Martell and Tommy John Schiavone and I were all at a prayer vigil this morning related to what we all saw in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with the killing of George Floyd. So it was a moving tribute, and lots of clergy from various churches. I spoke this morning. It's still going on. We unfortunately had to leave a little bit early because this work session was scheduled. So, all right. So we're going to start out this morning with sort of an update and a conversation about reopening town hall and other town facilities. Where, as you know, in phase one, I think we're going to be in phase two next week, according to the governor's phases of reopening. And I'm happy to see that we've met the metrics and we are finally starting to open up a little bit. And I'm hoping to not have to meet in, the virtual space, but in reality at some point, maybe even later this month. I'm looking forward to that, seeing everybody, even if we're socially distant. So we're going to try, but for now we're meeting via Zoom. It's not the easiest way to meet, but we're doing our best. So we're going to try to open up town hall to the public starting on Monday with some restrictions. So, but rather than going into it, I'm going to let others go into it. I'm going to kind of kick this over to Deputy Supervisor Frank Zappone, and Frank will lead this conversation.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, board members. I'm going to attempt to share on the screen a short slide presentation that'll walk us through the discussion. And at some point, Sandra Cirencione and Ryan Murphy and Len Marchese will be joining. I'm not sure if they're online yet. So give me a second just to share the screen with you.
Sandra is on and Len is on. And I suspect Ryan is on too, but don't see him yet.
Okay.
Ryan is on too.
Yeah, we texted Ryan to come on.
Is everyone seeing this first slide?
No.
Well, I'm getting a message. Ryan is trying to connect to audio. It just keeps going back and forth. So I don't know if he's on or not, Frank, just to let you know.
Charles,
okay.
Let him in.
He's in.
So I have the slide up on my computer and I did a shared screen. Is anyone on the call seeing the screen?
No, I think Charles has to share it. The administrator has to.
I gave him permission to share.
Well, we're not seeing anything.
All right, let me go back to shared screen, select the window. Okay, share.
Something's happening.
Okay.
You're getting there.
There you go.
Bingo. There we go.
Okay, you got it?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. What we're gonna share with you today, and I've sent hard copies to the board members, and you may have a hard copy in front of you, but this may be the best way. As Jay indicated, on Monday, we'll begin to the phase 1 of reopening town operations. The board members already know that the beach operations have been expanding beginning Memorial Day weekend. But now we will open town hall and other town facilities. Understand that what we're talking about here is pretty much town hall centric because that's the place most frequented by the public, and the individual offices that are outside of town hall, i.e. CPF office, Parks and Recreation office, they've established protocols built on the foundation elements that are in this summary. So that being said, I just want to go to some of the people who were involved in helping putting this together. And this is by no means everybody, but the key players are listed here, from HR, Public Safety, the Comptroller's Office, Public Works, and my apologies for the typo, the Facilities Department, Walter from Employee Safety, Glenn from Risk Management, and of course, feedback from our department heads. And I would invite Len and Sandra and Ryan to jump in wherever they feel they need to add. We started out the process with some goals and objectives in mind, and I think they're pretty self-evident at this point, but I think it's helpful to restate them here. First and foremost, we want to ensure the safety of our employees and the public as they begin to engage more fully in town operations. We want to develop a plan that has transition elements to it, working towards full operations and being consistent with the guidelines being provided by the state and federal government reopening plans. We want to rely on the best medical health and safety information that's available to us. And of course, consistently trying to be flexible, knowing that circumstances can change, both to be more restrictive and or less restrictive. And we want to create a plan that gives us ability to be responsive to those changes. I wanted to spend a few minutes just summarizing what's already in place, recognizing that the transition for the public to town hall will begin on Monday, June 8th. We have an installation of what are referred to as sneeze barriers at all the principal high traffic counters throughout town, particularly in town hall, but they've also been installed at the Parks Department, the Highway Department, and other places where staff might interact with the public. We have social distancing markers and other signage throughout the building. We are in the process of creating a color-coded pass system for each of the departments, because initially, based on the capacity of the building to support social distancing, we established a per department limit. So for example, in the town clerk's office, where you can only accommodate 2 people at a time and maintain social distance, the capacity is set at 2. And we used a similar model with Peter's help and Ryan's help to go through each department and establish similar limits and put floor markings in place to guide people during that process. Initially, we will have a second security guard at the desk between the hours of operation, which will be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's hours at which the public is entered the building. Staff will work their regular day. We think there may be some initial confusion when people are queuing outside the building because we have no waiting area within the building that allows for maintaining social distance. So that second security guard would help guide people to the appropriate places and help them observe some of the conditions that are required, the social distancing and wearing face coverings being the 2 principal ones. Again, this last point alludes to what's being done at the beaches, which I think has been working well. I understand in the coming weekend, Kristen Doulos, the Director of Parks and Rec, is planning to expand the operations of some of the other principal beaches. We had been using 3. I think her plan is to go up to 5, perhaps 6 beaches, and that information is currently available to the public on the town website. We have established some staffing protocols, which are listed here. I mentioned already that we are maintaining the department staffing limits, not only in terms of the public, but also the percentages of staff which are allowed under the pause order from the governor to return to work. We have made some exceptions, not only for essential personnel, but for other departments, i.e. the building department will be operating at a higher staffing percentage than other departments because of the demand of the building trades and the need for their support from the building department. Staff has been provided with supplies for PPE, mostly face masks, sanitizer, and the social distancing markers within each department, in addition to around the rest of the building. We will also be providing a protocol for the staff entering the building, which we'll describe in later detail in a few minutes. And I hope when we get to that, that Sandra and Ryan will join in, because they've been the principal architects of that part of the plan. We've worked with department heads to establish an appointment protocol. Initially, people who come to the building, we're asking them to make appointments in advance. Each department has identified a unique number for that purpose, and we are establishing a universal calendar so that the security desk can monitor those people who come to the building. I want to add, for the public's benefit here, that calling in advance could also mean calling outside from the parking lot, not necessarily from home. But the more advance notice you give the department, the better chance you have of getting in and out of the building in a timely fashion without having to wait on a queuing line for too long. We are in that process encouraging the community to do what we're doing here today, establish a conference call, which the departments are prepared to do. We can also do a video call. The departments are prepared to make those arrangements, but sometimes a simple conference call would be sufficient. That information will be made available to the public again on our website, and also in signage that's in and around the town hall, both inside and out. And the last part of our pre-opening, this is all work that's been done over the past couple of weeks. Public access to the building will be limited to the main entrance only. People entering town hall will come through the main entrance, with the exception, of course, for those people who need handicapped accessibility. They will call a number and they will be escorted to use the ramp on the southeast side of the building. The public is going to be expected to wear face coverings and maintain social distancing at all times inside the building, and when on any queuing line, both outside the building or within any given department. So in general terms, that summarizes the preparation that we've done in anticipation of Monday. I ask Len or Sandra or Ryan if there's anything that they feel they need to add at this point.
I think you covered it, Frank.
Okay, any questions from the board members?
I have a question. I'm not a board member, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, but we'll allow you to ask a question anyways.
We might not answer it, though.
Thank you, and that's fine, too. I just was wondering, you know, I've already actually made a couple of appointments because of my work on the virtual marriage licenses. So I had some people queued up already. So that worked well. But Frank, I was just wondering, how are we educating the public that we are now going to be open for appointments?
Well, this presentation to the town board is the first step in that, Sunday. Then we'll take this presentation and put it on the website, and then we will begin broadcasting the information through our electronic communications, both through social media and the various email lists that we use to disseminate information to the public.
Terrific.
That will begin right after this board presentation. I wanted to give the board an overview before we shared any of this additional information with the public, but thank you.
Frank, we're restricting access to the front or the north entrance of the town hall, but if for disabled individuals, they'll still be able to use the ramp in the back, correct?
That's correct. There'll be a number out front, Jay, for people to just call if they need handicapped access, and staff will be prepared to allow them to enter that the ramp on the southeast side of the building.
Any other questions? Frank, I want to thank you for all the work that you guys have been doing. You know, the whole pandemic has put us in the position of having to sort of reformulate everything we do, reinvent things, and the amount of planning that goes into rethinking how we operate in light of protecting the public and our employees is just extraordinary. So, you know, there may be some other questions, but I just wanted to extend my my gratitude to you and the entire team for working on this.
Well, thank you, Jay. It certainly has been a team effort. There's been a lot of, I think what we ended up with was not what we started with. We did a lot of changes along the way, but we've also learned a lot by, you know, listening to what our neighboring jurisdictions have done. And I know that you and other board members and some staff have been on the, now, I guess, daily calls with the county and other agencies. So we've sort of gleaned a lot of information from those resources as well. So it's been, yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
As we approach Monday, June 8th, these are some of the things that will be in place that both our staff and the public will encounter as they come to the town building. Some of this is repetitious, but I think it is worth repeating to Sunday's point earlier. But also, again, I want to emphasize that some of this is town hall centric. You may not find exactly the same conditions if you visit the Parks Department or if you visit the annex that Sunday has over at the Hampton Bays Community Center in Hampton Bays. But the underlying principles remain the same, to protect the public and to protect our employees.
So Frank, I did have a question. Staff access to the building is also going to be limited to the front door?
No, we are encouraging the staff to use entrances other than the front door, although there's not necessarily a conflict in terms of traffic. The staff enters the building, as you know, using their ID badge, and they can enter from any of the entrances around Town Hall, but including main entrance, but we are encouraging them to use other entrances so that we avoid any point of conflict between staff coming in and out of the building and any public that might be already queuing up to make an appointment earlier in the day. So and the added security guard will help with that flow.
So my second question was regarding that. If we have by appointment only for the public coming through the front door, they should be made aware of that ahead of time, obviously, but there may be public who might not be aware of that, to Sunday's point. There should be signage out front that's saying that this queue is for by appointment only, so that they're aware that they're not going to stand in a queue for a length of time to get to the desk to find out that they don't have an appointment. Would they be turned away at that point?
No, you'll see as we get to the second and third and fourth slides on this, some of the samples of signage that's already prepared to be in place. They will not be turned away. They would simply be asked to make a telephone call to arrange for an appointment, which they can do right on the spot. We're not sure of the volume, but we're not going to send anybody home because they don't have an appointment. We'll give them instructions on how to make that appointment. And if they're here at 11 and they know they can't get an appointment till 12, it would be up to them to, go and get a cup of coffee, go back home and come back. We will try to accommodate anybody who shows up to the building, especially in the early stages when not everybody's going to be fully cognizant of these protocols.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Frank, I just wanted to make one point as you push out the information about our opening, that the Hampton Bays Annex will not be opening on June 8th. We are still in the process of retrofitting that office.
Okay.
And it's the coordination with the senior center too. We're trying to work out how that would all work, because that won't be opening at the same time. So we're still working on that. I just wanted to make sure that it's not pushed out, that annex is also open for appointments.
Well, and that's good, important clarification, Cindy. It sort of underscores what I've said a couple of times already. What we're looking at here is very town hall centric.
Right.
We will also be providing, and Cindy's office is one of those, direct contact numbers, so that if you want to call, when you call ahead, you'll be able to reach out to someone. And I'm sure if someone reaches Cindy's office and is looking for contact with the annex in Hampton Bays, whoever Cindy is designated to address those calls will give the caller the correct information so that they can make the appointment in an appropriate way, as is the case with all of the other departments. We've asked them not to use their general numbers, but to assign a person, that is the departments, to assign a person with who will be available to address those specific questions about how to get access to that department during this phase 1 of the process. So going forward, we will continue to have a drop-off area in the main lobby. There are 2 things that relates to. We've had for several weeks now a place where people can drop off a document or drop off mail without having to meet with anybody in the building. And that would include the continuing of your tax bill payments. Teresa Kiernan's office has arranged for a staff person to be available to come out and meet with people. No appointment would be necessary for that. The staff would come to the lobby area, collect that payment, and those people could be on their way. So for those 2 items, bringing documents or mail to the building that doesn't require you to meet with staff, no appointment would be necessary. And if you're here to make your tax payment, Teresa's office has worked out a protocol to collect that payment and send you on your way. I mentioned earlier that the department capacities have been determined based on the ability to maintain social distance if you're queuing in those departments, and those markers are already in place. Any questions about facility actions or any additional comments from Len or Sandra or Orion?
No, you're good, Frank.
Okay, staffing actions. The staffing levels are increasing, consistent with the pause order from the governor and the needs of the department. Most of them at around 50%, but some higher because of increased demand in that department. And those decisions have been shared with the department heads. Staff protocols have been shared with staff through the department heads. We will do temperature and oxygen saturation assessments for staff as they enter the building each day. Those will be coordinated within each department. The staff members will be required to fill out a daily health attestation. That is a document that asks specific questions, and those questions and that document have been reviewed by health professionals as the appropriate questions to give any indicators if there is a need for further assessment on that individual. We'll have access points to the town facilities, as I described earlier, for staff. There'll be 2-person team at the security desk, and we are encouraging the staff work with the public to establish Zoom-style technologies in lieu of in-person encounters. And it's my understanding in some departments that's already beginning to occur. The last section here is somewhat repetitive, but I think it just shows the overlap between the facilities actions and staffing actions and the public actions. Public access to town hall will be by appointment only in this, with the exception of the tax receiver and document drop-off. The town hall hours during phase 1 will be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Visitors will be given a pass at the access point, which is the security desk, designating which department they will be visiting, and then they are to return that that pass to the security desk when they leave the building. And then again, to repeat, we're going to increase the Zoom style conference calling wherever possible within the building. It's been a bit of a challenge, as the supervisor mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, but all of us are beginning to get doing business. And although many of us don't like to see ourselves on camera, it's one of the consequences of doing business this way. So I think it's working more smoothly than it may have been 3 or 4 weeks ago for all of us. And conference calling is even less problematic because you don't have the added technological burden of a video image that you have your software and your internet have to support. If there aren't any other questions or comments, I just want to move on to the question that Councilman Bouvier raised earlier. What you see on this slide are some of the conditions that are listed in the signage that will appear outside the building. And the graphics on the right illustrate what some of that signage looks like. The long skinny gray panel to your far right is our markings that are presently on the sidewalk outside the building. The yellow and black sign are inside the building within various departments and through the corridors of the building. And the sandwich board messaging is throughout the building, reminding people of the behaviors that are expected of them as they go from place to place once inside the building. This signage in many cases is already in place or stockpiled somewhere in the building and prepared to be put in place come Friday, June 5th, and it'll be available and in place by Monday. And then lastly, there's a photograph here on your left of some of the sneeze barriers that have been installed. This is the building department. Similar plexiglass partitions have been in town clerk's office, CRC, tax receiver's office, Parks and Recreation Department, elsewhere throughout the building and throughout town. So that there is a barrier between the employee and the members of the public who are coming to visit that department. You'll see on the floor in front of that desk a social distancing marker. We have stairwell designations throughout the building. There's an up stairwell and a down stairwell to avoid people passing each other in a narrow corridor. And that's represented by the one-way arrow that you see on the far right. We have a drop box that's been in the lobby for several months now. That's going to remain there throughout phase 1 and maybe longer. And what you have in front of you is a sample of the kind of placard that'll be in the building, outside the building, and on the website, with appropriate numbers for the public to call if they choose to make some arrangement to meet with a staff member. This is a partial listing. The other departments will be part of this, and that'll be circulated later today, Monday, and of course available throughout next week. Any questions from board members or added comments from Len, Ryan, or Sandra?
How about me? I'd like to make a comment. Frank. I
Please.
think this is wonderful, and I just wanted to just add, we've been working in our office since the beginning of the closing of Town Hall, and we've found that approximately 75% of the calls that we field are transferred to other departments. So we developed a list of frequently transferred phone calls so that my staff could be more efficient in transferring them. But we've also developed one of email addresses that we have found the constituents have been very appreciative of, because when they don't get someone to actually answer a call, they are able to send their requests directly to them, and then the department can respond at their convenience. And I was hoping maybe, in addition to posting telephone numbers for appointments, to make it easier for the constituents to get an email address, because right now you really have to drill down into each department in order to find an address to send in information. Maybe if we also developed a departmental general list of email addresses and made it readily available on our front of our website, it would be extremely helpful in reducing calls and potentially traffic that we might be able to help them without them having to call in.
I think that's a good suggestion, Sunday. What I would like to do is reach out to the department heads to identify that email address, because what we've asked them with the numbers is to be sure that this is a number of someone who is going to be available to answer the phone and has access to the ability to make an appointment for the department.
Yes, and Frank, on that note, I'm just going to comment that for us, that's not possible. We have to use our general number because we're at 50% staffing. So 100% of the time, one person can't be available to answer that phone call. So we have assigned 3 people in my department because they're here every day. I had asked to try and arrange that, but it wasn't I wasn't able to do that with the 50% staffing level.
Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sunday, but other departments have done the same thing for the same reason. The building department has 3 people. The tax assessor's office has a couple of people.
Yes.
We want people to be able to actually reach somebody. So
we always answer the phone.
those refinements will come as we go through the process, but that's a helpful suggestion. Thank you. Hello?
There you go, Frank.
Okay, I was muted there for a second. Any other added comments or questions?
Now, Frank, I just want to chime in. It's, I think we've put a lot of effort into this, and I would commend the whole working group that worked on it, and also the folks in Municipal Works that have helped us to make a lot of the facilities modifications, put out the markings and everything like that to really have this laid out well. I know we've shared our plans with a lot of other townships and municipalities, and I think that they've used them as an example of how some of them are going to be proceeding forward and preparing for reopening too. So it's very nice that we've been able to kind of serve as an example to a lot of our colleagues in different municipalities on how to try and handle this as best as possible. Obviously, it's going to be a learning experience for all of us, but I think we're taking the appropriate steps to try and make this happen as smoothly and safely as it can.
Thank you, Ryan. You reminded me to add, I wanted to thank our friends at Southampton Hospital who have been helpful and been available to answer questions that we may have had. They've played a role in our ability to craft this plan as well.
Hey, Frank, can you unshare your screen?
Say again?
Can you unshare the screen?
Just give me one last second, right, Charles, and I'll do that. I just wanted to, for the public's benefit, state what may be obvious, that this process is connected to the pause orders that come out by the governor's office and health information and local conditions. We expect that this will be about a week or 2 week phase. It might be longer, it might be shorter, but conditions will change either to be less restrictive or more restrictive as we go through this entire process. That being said, I will obey Charles's command and stop sharing.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's not
Any other questions, comments, or suggestions? Okay.
Good job, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you to the whole team. You know, obviously we'll modify procedures as we need to, you know, once things get up and running and we see what's working and what's not working. But to all of you for putting it together. I think that the board can see the extent of the work that went into it, not just in planning, but procuring, designing, so many different elements, physical changes to the buildings, plexiglass, everything. All right, so let's go back to our agenda. Let's see what we have here. You know, maybe before we do the review of the draft agenda, that there has been a lot going on the last couple of days. And the governor or governor's office, the Empire State Development Office have issued some clarifications and some new guidance. There was a new executive order. Ryan, you're on the line here too. Some of it is going to directly affect us in terms of the opening of restaurants, the opening of outdoor botanical gardens and things like that. So Ryan, let me give it to you and maybe you can update us a little bit on some of the more recent changes.
Sure. Thanks, Supervisor. Yeah, so I was just meeting with my staff. I apologize for being on a couple minutes late here at the beginning. And I was going over some of this stuff with them as well. And I think that one of the things we can say to summarize what we should expect and what the community can expect is, I think we're going to see a lot more activity out there with phase 2 being engaged next week. Some of the things that are going to be allowed to happen under phase 2 are going to be some more retail activity. Right now, that's still limited to, curbside and in-store pickup. So you're seeing some more engagement already in the retail sector, but you're going to actually see people being able to go into stores and shop now. So that's going to be a more active, community area. You're going to see outdoor dining start up because that's been allowed in phase 2 by the state of New York. So there'll be more activity in the community with regards to that. I think a lot of people are going to be super happy to see barbershops and salons reopen because I know a lot of people have been dying for that. We've had our spouses and significant others, in many cases, cutting our hair for the last month or two. And so it'll be nice to have a professional do that. I'm sure my wife won't be happy to hear that I didn't say she was a professional at that, but whatever.
Great.
I'm going to start collecting a fee for my haircuts.
I had my daughter cut mine. She did a great job.
So Jay, you'll be happy to have a barbershop reopen.
No, I keep having my daughter do it if she's around. She did
But all of these things are going to be phase 2 things. We were really happy yesterday to be able to announce to some of our botanical and sculpture gardens in the town of Southampton that they would be able to reopen their exteriors immediately. We communicated directly with New York State Empire State Development and got a determination specifically from them that is allowable. We argued that on the basis that, they are basically the same as parks in terms of their outdoor spaces, that they should be afforded the opportunity to open. That was a request on behalf of the town of Southampton and the town of East Hampton that we led the charge on, and we were really happy to be able to convey that reopening capability to the botanical gardens and parks, sculpture gardens rather, in our area. So they are allowed to reopen. So we're moving forward in the reopening of society and the reopening of the economy after several months of suffering here. So I can expect, and I think we would all reasonably expect, that our area will see another level of busyness, a little bit more of people kind of starting to go about their business and the normal return. I think we've all already seen the traffic return to the area if anybody's coming in from the west. Because we've already seen construction kick back up again and all of those types of services, wholesale, industry, uh, uh, all of that has already happened in terms of phase one. And I would expect that as we proceed through phase two, there will be additional businesses and additional industry sectors that will be added into phase two as we see success and as different industries petition for inclusion into phase two. So that's the not so short, but short version of everything that's been going on with regards to the changes that folks can expect to see.
I remind the board too that there's still an emergency order at the local level in place. There's actually several of them. One expires every 5 days. That's the more recent one where we've restricted the road ends and some of the other places to resident only and local renter only. So those are, I've renewed, I think, twice now, and I'll probably have to renew it again because I'd like to see that stay in place. It's been working apparently very well. Everybody is telling me that things have calmed down quite a bit now at those road ends, though there's still a couple of occasional problems here or there, but for the most part that has worked. But can't keep those in place indefinitely. At some point the board may want to consider in some of these places enacting local laws that will restrict in the summertime or whatever, Memorial Day through Labor Day, some of the areas closest to the road ends, closest to the beaches, to our town residents. And then the larger order that is restricts access to town hall and suspends a lot of our programming, not local laws, but other things. That's still in effect, and I'm not even sure that what the current end date of that. Maybe Frank, if he's still on, will have it, or maybe Jim. But so that's still in effect, and we modify those as we start to open things up. And I would have never imagined the town would be plunged into a emergency declaration that is now 2.5 months old. That's I never would have thought, typically, Superstorm Sandy or things like that, it's usually a short term, 5 days for an emergency order or a hurricane type of situation. This is, I think over 2.5 months now that we're in executive orders. So I'm looking forward to the day that we can go back to resume normalcy or some new normal, because I have a feeling that social distancing and masks are still going to be part of our routine for a while. And, some of the other things like not shaking hands will probably stay with us for a while as well. And there'll be some lasting changes that result from this pandemic period. But it is nice to see, though, that things are returning. There's lots of ways that people are finding to get together with social distancing. Like the vigil today. There's events coming up, drive-in movie event that I know Sunday has been working on the permitting. It's a fundraiser, and that it sounds like a fun event. There's a concert, virtual concert this weekend. It's another fundraiser for the food pantries. So lots of exciting things going on. People are finding ways to interact, and it is a hopeful sign that the door is starting to open a little bit, and things are starting to return to some sense of normal. Any questions for Ryan on any of the steps we're taking? Any of the governor's changes, guidance? We plan to be in stage 2 early next week. We're hoping for Monday. There's no guarantee, but Ryan, can you talk a little bit about outdoor seating at restaurants and how a restaurant will go about? Obviously, those who have outdoor dining permits now, that's easy, but how do they expand it from the tables that they have? And those who haven't had outdoor dining, might look toward public spaces, sidewalks, road shoulders, even on-street parking to try to get some tables. And I know personally, I want these restaurants to survive. They've had a very challenging period, and I would like the town to sort of bend over backwards to see if we can find a way to help them. So with that, I'll kick it to you.
Yeah, sure. So we are working on that. We've been working on that for a couple of weeks now. The Fire Marshal's office under, we also are thankful to have the leadership of Chief Fire Marshal John Rankin in there, newly appointed by this board, has been very creative in trying to develop solutions to provide some emergency relief to the businesses, particularly the restaurants that are experiencing some pain related to COVID. There will be outdoor dining allowable as of next week, as per the state. They've included it in phase 2. There are requirements that the outdoor dining will have to meet. They will have to maintain social distancing when individuals are not seated at a table and moving around within the space that's controlled by the restaurant. They will have to be wearing masks. The staff will have to wear masks. Those are things that must be done to be in compliance with the state order. We are working with the land management department and Janice Shearer's staff and Dennis O'Rourke to develop mechanisms by which we can allow for some emergency relief to these restaurants to be able to potentially expand their footprint if they already have outdoor dining, if they have other space that's available to them to be able to break out into and set up some additional tables. We're working with them to be able to do that. And if a location does not already have outdoor dining, we will work with them if they have space available to be able to create some outdoor dining area. The intention is that there is no indoor dining, so we're trying to help people to be able to have places to go as far as the public's concerned, but as far as the restaurateurs are concerned, come close to maybe trying to achieve some of the capacity that they would have had before, just in an outdoor setting. So there's a process that we already have in place for folks that have outdoor dining as part of their site plan. Obviously, they can continue to conduct business in those spaces. If they're looking to expand it, they'll be able to reach out to us at the Fire Marshal's office. We've cooked up I don't want to call it an application, but for lack of a better term, I will say an application process or a form to fill out for emergency business relief for temporary outdoor dining. We're making it as simple a process as possible so that we can just speed right through things and get people going with what they're looking to achieve.
Do we have any questions for Ryan about how that's all working with the restaurants?
Yeah, I do. Ryan, how does a tent affect their capacity? Are they allowed to put a accessory tent or a canopy outside?
So if they want a tent, they would have to go through the normal process of filling out for a tent permit with the Fire Marshal's office. The intention of the emergency relief for outdoor dining would be untented spaces. Putting up a tent or erecting a tent in any way, shape, or form is not going to be something that's included as just a permission in the emergency relief for outdoor dining. If they want to put up a tent, they'd have to go through the normal process of applying for a tent permit, because there are fire safety requirements that are mandated by the state that go along with putting up any kind of a tent. There's certain requirements in terms of lighting, flammability of the tent, making sure that it's placed soundly, secured appropriately. Unfortunately, as if we haven't had enough problems already this year, we've now, as of June 1st, remember, entered hurricane season. So there are things like wind load and things that have to be taken into consideration to make sure that the tent is sound and structurally able to withstand certain environmental factors. So if somebody wants to put up a tent as part of this whole thing, I would suggest that they reach out to the Fire Marshal's office quickly and begin the application process for a tent permit. There's nothing that says that they can or can't put up a tent. It would all be dependent upon meeting the requirements as set forth in the tent permit guidelines.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ryan? Okay, thank you, Ryan.
No problem.
And, thank you for all the advocacy you did on behalf of those cultural centers too. I think that was very helpful.
It was a common sense thing, Supervisor. I think you guys all agreed that if parks could be open, there was no reason they shouldn't. So we were all happy to advocate on our behalf to try and make sure that
And
they got
the
that.
governor's team, I've been getting a lot of calls and conversations with the governor's reps. They seem, they've been very responsive to some of our concerns, and we've been speaking with a unified voice. Sometimes it's East Hampton and Southampton, like you mentioned. Sometimes it's all the East End supervisors. Sometimes it's all of Suffolk County supervisors. Sometimes it's Nassau and Suffolk supervisors and mayors and city managers. And, we've really been communicating in a way that we never have in the past, sometimes on a daily basis, sometimes on a weekly basis. And in fact, I'm missing a call right at the moment with the, governor's rep with some of the Suffolk County supervisors. So, but I'll catch up on that information. All right. Anything else for us, Ryan? We can then move on.
Nothing more from me unless you guys have any questions for me.
All right. I don't see any. All right. So let's go to the agenda. Let's review the agenda for the June 9th meeting. This still will be via Zoom. So we'll meet online. So I am, as I said, hoping that the following town board meeting, we're able to meet in person with social distancing. And Frank is busy working on how we're going to do this. But I think there's a way, hopefully at, the town board meeting room, if not maybe in Hampton Bays at the senior center, where we'll be able to social distance and maybe bring the public in either by appointment or one at a time, or maybe there's enough space to have a few people present. So this is the meeting of June 9th, and it will be at 1 p.m. Via Zoom, as I said. And let's see, we have 6 public hearings in total. The first public hearing is on acquiring lands of Schmidt in Bridgehampton, amending the CPF management and stewardship plan to include that property. The second hearing is on the acquisition of lands of Ruby Associates, LLC, Hampton Bays, amending the CPF management and stewardship plan to include that property. The third is a hearing on the acquisition of lands of Zipper in Tuckahoe, amending the CPF management and stewardship plan for that property. The fourth is also on acquiring lands, Chapter 140 of lands of DePiro and Dederick in West Hampton, and amend the CPF management plan. The fifth public hearing amends the conservation easement of the Madu Conservancy, so that's being considered. And the sixth is a public hearing accepting a grant of open space in connection with the subdivision map of Edwards on Middle Line Highway. So Lisa Combrink will be busy presenting various things to us. Most of our hearings, if not all, have to do with open space in one form or another. So any questions about the public hearings? Okay, then let's move on to resolutions. And again, we read these so that if anybody has any questions at this juncture, we can try to address them before we finalize it onto our agenda for the meeting. So 33786 is a resolution authorizing the acquisition of lands of Schmidt in Bridgehampton and amends the CPF management and stewardship plan to include that property. And was that one of the hearings? Yes. So that, likely won't be eligible for a vote, assuming we leave the record open for 2 weeks as we have been doing. 33795 is authorizing the acquisition of Ruby Associates, Bays. So once again, you're probably not eligible for vote, have to be tabled until we close the written record. 33788 authorizes acquisition of lands of Zipper in Tuckahoe, same deal. 33784 authorize acquisition of lands of DePiro, Dederick in West Hampton, also will have to get tabled. 34194 authorizes agreement with LICAD for, that's LICADD for counseling services. That's Long Island Council on Alcohol and Drug Dependence. And Rick, you're next.
Yeah, Town Board Resolution 34123, authorize the purchase of 2 Kenworth T370 from Gabrielli Truck Sales Limited using the Sourcewell contract. And then Town Board Resolution 34168, authorize the supervisor to sign a contract for used wheel loader with All Island Equipment Corporation.
Thank you. 34196 authorizes the purchase of, I guess, software. There's a mistake in the title. Hang on one second.
OGS contract.
Yeah. The purchase of VMware upgrade software, I think is what it should say. So authorize the purchase of VMware software from the New York State OGS contract with Dell. So Jim or somebody, can we fix that for the meeting?
Sure.
All right. 34162 amends the 2020 adopted budget for Bridgehampton Park District. 34161, just hold on one second. Do we know what material is being tested on that last one? Is that for the acoustical study?
I believe it is.
That sounds like the right price.
Yeah, it does. It does sound like what number we were talking about.
It was a
Well,
while ago, but they were
It
gonna.
it was a while back to do some soundproofing materials.
No, Jay, no, that had to do with when they would, because they're doing a major renovation, Christine felt that they had to check for asbestos type material in the flooring or something. And so that was to check for that first.
It cost $20,000 to check it and test it.
Yeah, or something. That's what that had to do with. Specifically for some asbestos type of abatement, something or other, I don't know.
All right, and that's funded through the Bridgehampton Park District.
Correct.
All right, 34161 amends the 2020 budget, adopted budget for E911. Three, 4, 1, 2, 6 authorizes highway fund pay-as-you-go for purchase of equipment. 34165 West Hampton War Memorial Ambulance Association Incorporated Service Award Program. And John, you're next.
Town Board Resolution ID 34193, Water Quality Advisory Committee appointments.
Where are the, it's Stephanie Davis's, and Anthony Graves, okay.
Yeah, we're our chair, and we've added Anthony Graves, who's really interesting and good, will be a great addition to the Water Quality Board.
I know Anthony well. He's good. He's good. Very knowledgeable guy.
Yeah, he's a really great hopes for him, I think.
34127 authorizes the town attorney to retain outside counsel, Be Ready Fishbein Hatter and Donovan LLP, to represent the interests of the highway superintendent as it relates to St. Andrews Road. I'm sure we'll end up discussing this on the floor. This is not to exceed 12,500. The highway superintendent has requested counsel to challenge Jim Burke's interpretation of the ownership of Tuckahoe Road in that area. And I don't think there are any issues there in terms of, there's any question about who owns that property. But, I'll say more about it next week. But the highway superintendent's claiming that he has right to his own counsel as a separately elected highway official. So this would grant that request for counsel. 34182 waives building permit fees for the Bridgehampton Child Care and Recreation Center.
Town Board Resolution ID 34116 to accept the maintenance bond in connection with the site plan of Flying Point LLC Wine and Water.
34169 senior accountant salary adjustment. Okay, we'll talk about that. 34122 notice of public hearing on the acquisition of lands of Sullivan Eichenbaum, maybe, Hampton Bays, and amends the CPF management and stewardship plan to include that property. 34090, notice of public hearing on the acquisition of land of Yun in Hampton Bays, and amends the CPF management and stewardship plan to include that property. 34198 authorizes amendment of historic preservation and conservation easement on the Maudu Conservancy property located at 618 Sagaponack Main Street, Sagaponack Main Street, Sagaponack, related to the building known as the new structure. And we'll have to hear more about that, which is the subject of public hearing. All right, that's the last resolution I see. Are there any add-ons? Any questions about any of those? Okay, is there any other business other than executive session? Okay, hearing none. So let me then make a motion to end our work session and go into executive session to discuss CPF acquisitions, personnel matters, and contracts, and confidential legal advice.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I heard you said aye too. Okay, Tommy John, were you an aye too? And
Is Tommy John on here? Because I never saw
I
him
don't-
show up.
yeah, he's here.
He is
Oh,
I am
on.
on.
There he is.
Have you been here the whole time?
No, I have
Okay.
not.
I
just
want to
got on
clarify.
about 10 minutes ago.
Okay,
Aye.
great.
But let's please mark him present. All right. All right. So we had all the votes we needed to close the meeting and go into executive session. So thank you, board. And you have a dial-in number for executive session. So I'll see you on the conference call.